Okay, let's unpack this. We're diving into something that, well, it feels pretty straightforward on the surface, right? Electric cars versus traditional ones, the environmental cost.
And the common perception is pretty clear. Electric cars, zero emission, no tailpipe, so they're just clean, saving the planet.
Exactly. You see the ads, you hear the talk, but the source we're looking at today suggests maybe it's not quite so simple when you look at the full picture.
Precisely. This article from Courier.eat, Electric versus Other Cars, True Pollution Costs. It really challenges that initial thought. It makes you pause and ask, okay, what really goes into it from start to finish?
Right. It's not just accepting that zero tailpipe idea as the whole story.
Yeah.
The article seems to push us to look, well, deeper.
Yeah, much deeper. It highlights that the environmental story of any car really starts way before it even, gets to the dealership.
So, like the manufacturing process itself.
Exactly that. The source really emphasizes the environmental footprint that's kind of embedded in the manufacturing. It points out, sure, building any car has an impact. But the article specifically flags the resource extraction, the energy demands involved in making EV components, especially the battery packs.
Ah, the battery. That's the big one you always hear about. Needing lots of mining, lots of energy just to produce it. Does the article give a sense of like how big that initial hit is?
It definitely stresses that this initial cost is substantial. It's a critical piece of the puzzle that, gets missed if you only compare tailpipes.
Okay.
That talks about the materials needed, lithium, cobalt, nickel, and the factory processes, which are super energy intensive.
Right.
So the source suggests, basically, that an electric car starts its life with this significant environmental, well, debt, you could call it. A debt that maybe a traditional car builds up more gradually through fuel emissions over time.
Okay, that makes sense. So you've got this manufacturing impact, that battery debt. What else does the Courier article say is essential for a fair comparison?
Well, the other really big factor the source insists we absolutely have to consider is where the electricity comes from, to charge the car.
Ah, right. Because an EV might have zero tailpipe emissions itself.
Exactly. But those emissions haven't just vanished into thin air, have they? They have to be accounted for somewhere.
So if you're plugging into a grid that's mostly powered by, say, burning coal.
Then, yeah, the driving emissions haven't disappeared. They've essentially just moved from the car's tailpipe to the power plant's smokestack.
Okay.
What the article really hammers home is that the actual environmental benefit of an electric car hangs heavily on the energy grid it's plugged into.
So charging with solar or wind power is a totally different environmental calculation than charging in a place relying on fossil fuels. The article makes that clear.
Oh, absolutely. The source really highlights this grid variation. It means the environmental performance of the exact same electric car can look dramatically different depending on where it's driven and charged.
Interesting.
It suggests that, yeah, in places with really clean grids, the lifetime emissions advantage for EVs can be pretty significant. But in areas with grids that rely heavily on fossil fuels for electricity, that advantage shrinks. And that initial manufacturing burden we talked about, it becomes even more critical in the overall balance sheet, so to speak.
Right, right. So the takeaway from the Courier article isn't really EVs are bad or EVs are perfect. It's more like it's complicated.
That's precisely it. The core insight is that evaluating the true environmental cost is way more complex than just looking at the tailpipe. It's not simple.
You have to factor in how it's built, the energy used there.
And crucially, the energy source used to power it throughout its life. It's that whole life cycle perspective the source is pushing for, from cradle to grave, essentially. It urges you to look beyond just that visible part, the driving.
It really makes you think about, the hidden systems behind the technologies we use. It's not just about the shiny object itself.
It absolutely does. It forces you to consider the whole infrastructure, the supply chains, the energy generation, all carrying their own environmental weight, often invisible to us as the end user.
So for you listening, what does this deep dive really mean? Perhaps it's a nudge to think differently about how we assess the impact of, well, any technology, really.
Are we truly looking at the whole system, from how it's made to how it runs? Or are we just focusing on the most obvious, maybe the most convenient part of the story?
Something to definitely chew on.